So we have got a special one for you today. I can't tell you what podcast it is because it was 24 hours notice I was given for this podcast. And we are joined by Jason from AutoPot. And he is going to call in live from Medellin, Colombia. And he's going to rub salt in the wound because it is cold, dark, and wet in Liverpool at the moment. And he is in a place in the world where it is warm, sunny, and he's being served mojitos at the side of a pool. So listen in to our conversation with Jason, and we touch on what he's doing in Colombia, and we do get a little bit deep onto the medical side of cannabis, a little bit of politics, just a great all-round podcast. So sit back, put your feet up, and enjoy this podcast, and I'll see you on the other side.
All good? Ready to go? Turn my voice up a little bit. Oh, got that. Everyone watching, the whole family.
Are you ready to go? Are you built to be in the house that I built, in the booth that I built?
I know people tune in every Sunday to listen, but even when business is good, we still manage to do the podcast. NPK.
So, for everybody that is listening, we have a special guest, our special guest. He is quite literally halfway around the world, and he's called in for this special podcast from Medellin, Colombia. What's it like there?
It's horrible. I'm sitting by a 5-star pool with my shoes off, and I'm ready to go over to the Medellin Cup in a couple of hours. So I think AutoPot are sponsoring it. The American guys are, and there's I think majority of people who were going to head to Chile, because obviously Chile's in a bit of a state of uproar at the moment, because we were heading there for a show there, but we've had to divert, come here, do the show here, and then I'm heading to the States, ultimately to the MJBizz.
Oh, nice. So right this very second, it's Friday, it's 3:00. You are in Columbia, Medellin. Is that correct?
Sorry, say that again, Steve.
So right now it's Friday when we're recording this, 3:00. You are in Medellin, Colombia.
I am in Medellin, Colombia, yeah. The home of Pablo Escobar.
The home of Pablo. How does it feel? What's the country like? It's like, I know you've just said there's a little bit of trouble on at the moment, but what's it like as a country? Is it a beautiful country? What is it built up?
Well, I flew into the UK from into Bogota.
Yeah,
Bogota, not a place I want to stay for a long time. I think there's 10 million people living in Bogota, and it is polluted, chaotic. Yeah, it takes you. I mean, we went to see some facilities. We went to see two companies, Pedica, which are an indoor growing facility that we're hopefully going to be working with.
Yeah,
and we went to go and see Colombian Organics, which are growing organically in greenhouses and not using any environmental control. Just what they can. They've got fans in there and they've got some power, but and two different mentalities of growing medical cannabis. Obviously, they're going to be growing medical cannabis for extraction.
Yeah.
And obviously, plants grow completely differently outdoors as they do indoors. You've got more control indoors as well, and the plant forms completely differently indoors as it does outdoors. But the two ethoses, or the thoughts behind both companies, are completely different as well.
Yeah.
I love the concept, and the guy, I can't remember what his name was now. I can't remember his name. Lovely guy. He's only about 32. He's come from a background where his father's a chrysanthemum grower.
Okay.
I think to date, I think they probably put in probably about $700,000 to set up the greenhouse. I've got some photos of the greenhouses as well. It's really nice, tall, high greenhouses that have been designed and positioned so that the wind catches them at the right angle. The plants,
Lovely.
They've got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
They've got a lot to learn, but they're learning fast. So people like me and other consultants will come in and help them and guide them in a direction, with certain aspects of cultivation to make sure they get up to speed, as fast as possible. But yeah, Bogota was it was chaotic to try and get anywhere. For one meeting, you'd probably take a 5-hour round trip just to maybe do 8 miles. It was insane.
Yeah.
And then obviously we were there for 4 days. We were there for 4 days, and then flew out to Medellin yesterday. Just managed to miss the protests in Bogota because they, in essence, South America's on fire at the moment.
And we don't get to hear about that on the UK news, do we?
No, unless you start going on, particular newspapers or particular news feeds, you don't get to hear. I mean, we had, everybody had to stop going to Chile because the uprising or the riots have been going on, the protests have been going on for, I think it's 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
And the hotel that myself and Mills were going to be staying at, we couldn't get to it because there's 1 million people prior to everything in front of it. Oh. So we decided even Big Mike didn't want to go, which I found quite strange.
If Big Mike doesn't want to go somewhere, you don't go there either.
Exactly. So we managed to get out of Bogota because Bogota actually announced before we were flying out from the UK that they were going to have protests on Thursday. And so there was a big sort of, Jesus, how are we going to get out of Bogota to Medellin? So we had to get to the airport 5 hours early. The flight was at 9:30. Got to the airport about sort of 5. And as we were getting there, the traffic starting to build up. The protests were starting to come out at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. The airport in Bogota was absolutely heaving because everybody to check in and got there really early. Within 2 hours, it looked like a ghost town because no one could get to the airport anymore. Flights were being cancelled. And then we thought, right, because the Medellin, the second biggest city in Colombia, we thought there were protests going to be here. Flew into Medellin, beautiful, beautiful city, absolutely stunning, slightly different climate. It's in a big bowl, like a natural valley bowl. You land on the top of a mountain, and then you just skate straight through a big tunnel. And hey, presto, you're in Medellin, and it's absolutely breathtaking.
Nice. So before I ask what you're up to in Medellin, first of all, you said you're taking lots of pictures. So if the people are listening and want to see those pictures, what's the best social media for them to go to, or will you even be uploading them to social media?
I'll probably give them all, ping them all over to Luke, and he'll put them in newsletters. They'll put them on social media like the AutoPot Facebook page, and Dave and the guys will probably put them on the Instagram pages, and cool. And Elena will probably put them on the Spanish Facebook pages as well.
Nice. Well, if you want to follow AutoPot on their social media, the best one for probably those sort of photos will be at AutoPot Cultivation Consultancy and AutoPot Global as well. So those two will be the best social medias for the pictures that Jason's going to be taking.
Was, and then and then probably AutoPot Facebook page, which pretty much most people know anyway. Just type in AutoPot Watering Systems and it'll be there.
Facebook's become the older generation now, Jason. The young hip kids like me.
Well,
we're all on Instagram. Actually, I'm not hip anymore. Apparently, the new hip place is TikTok. Apparently, that's the new place where all the hip kids are. I'm becoming one of the
Bing Bong.
No, only when somebody tries to get me attention at the front door.
That's the one the 3-year-olds are on.
Right. I'll be on that. But I'm trying. Listen, this TikTok's kicking off, but I just don't feel comfortable being on it, to be honest. It's all like the real young generation, 13, 14, 15-year-olds dancing to Mariah Carey songs, and all that the social media gurus are telling us is that TikTok's the next big thing, and I just don't feel comfortable being on it. And now I feel like a proper old fogey because I thought Instagram was the hip place, and it's not now. It's becoming the place where I am.
That's just the way it moves, isn't it? I can't keep up with it. I'll let the guys in the office do all that.
It is. Listen, I see your work on LinkedIn. You are on the ball with the LinkedIn posts, so keep that up because you're well ahead of the curve there. But I won't give too much away because that's like it's if you know with LinkedIn. So to keep up the good way on there, follow it. So in Bogota, you've been to 2 places. Did you say one was organic and one was the organic one indoor or outdoors?
The first one we visited was Columbia Organics.
Yeah.
So they're growing in the hills, in greenhouses using natural sunlight. And then the second one we went to see, and they want to be, or probably will be, the largest indoor facility in the world, with the floor space that they have. They're indoor growers. They've just recently been bought out by a California company.
Yeah.
Because they had a few issues with financial, it's like irregularities. It can be quite irregular over here, from what I gather. So they've now been bought out by a California company. So we're going to be having a meeting with a California company at the MJBizz show in Vegas. See if we can get some products into the California company, and then they will have a play and they will duplicate or take that blueprint of what we're hoping they'll take on, and then take it to Pitica. And then Pitica are also going to be growing in greenhouses once they've got this indoor facility. And I think they said it's going to be something like 40 hectares, which is immense.
That's the size of a
growing plant.
It's
immense. You know, I mean, I think there are 700 licenses that are being issued in Colombia as it stands at the moment.
That's not too bad, actually, is it? Would you say, from the top of my head, I'd say that's a generous amount, or is it, how many people?
Yeah,
is that a good amount, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, you know, whether they'll be successful or not is a ball game. But you know, because as you well know, and lots of people know, you know, you throw money at things, and if you've got no actual physical experience or knowledge or historic knowledge of growing a cannabis plant, whether for recreational purposes or for cannabis for medical purposes, you know, look at the Canadian market. It's on its backside at the moment. The share prices speak for themselves. The quality is awful. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of people worldwide that will be putting a lot of money in, and a lot of people losing a lot of money.
Yes.
I mean, the way I look at the market now, it's done and dusted. You know, the bottom's dropped out of it. No one's really interested. Well, even though they say, "Oh, you know, we're medical warriors and we're going to help feed the world and cure the world," to be honest with you, Steve, it's bullshit. You know, it's all about money.
What do you think about the bubble and burst? So everyone, all the millionaires, billionaires come in. They've got no knowledge. They do it because they see a quick profit. They invest. The bubble goes up. As soon as that bubble bursts, it's a very slow 10, 15, 30 year steady increase with the genuine people that have been here for 20, 30 years building up. And it's like the internet. It was a massive bubble. Everyone invested. Then the bubble burst. Everyone thought it was going to crash and then just slowly builds back up. Do you think that's what's going to happen with this industry?
I think what happened with this industry is that it's already started. You've got this, like Constellation that have put a lot of money into growth, Canopy and various other companies. The problem is, like the so-called bubble bursting of the internet, this is a physical product that people are growing.
Yeah.
So the likes of myself, who've got maybe 30 years plus experience in commercial crop production, from my point of view and the point of view of the people that I associate myself with who've been in the industry for 30, 40 years, it's a godsend because we'll just go in as consultants and get paid handsomely to teach them how to do it properly.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, the internet was, you know, the internet's the internet, but this is a physical plant that everybody's going to be growing to the best of their ability. So I think, you know, the prices will come down dramatically as they are already. You know, the Italians are obviously growing CBD under license from the government, and the prices that they are shipping kilos of medical cannabis out over the border at €900 a kilo now. So whether it's CBD and in soon to become THC products in various countries as well, because like America, you know, I don't know if you're aware, but in the government in Washington, the first stage of federally approving recreational cannabis growth in the US has been passed. It's gone past the first stage.
Right, I didn't know that.
So that happened about 3 days ago.
Yeah, big changes then, isn't it, for it to be federally legal?
And other countries watch the US. Yeah, and they watch America, they watch Canada, and they follow suit. So, you know, the UK is obviously doing what it's doing, and you know, it's inevitable. You can't have, you know, an amount of countries in the world that say, "Oh no, we're going to approve this now, crack on," and then the UK government basically say, no, we're going to keep it for ourselves because it just won't wash its face. It just won't happen. So I think, over the next 5 years, over the next 20 years, in 20 years' time, cannabis will just be like a Corona beer.
Yeah, it'd be nice to be like that, because I see these other countries going legal, and I read about the medicinal benefits. I'm thinking, why is our government not allowing us to start getting into this? I mean, we've got the Chelsea Flower Show, we've got some of the best growers on the planet. Let us have a little crack at it, but while it remains illegal, it remains illegal, and we need to. I don't know. There's a lot of people doing some good work to try and push us forward, but. There's going to be good things coming from the UK when it does become legal, I'm sure. So,
for sure. I mean, we're always a little bit slow in the UK because the UK think they're far more superior than all the other countries in the world, because obviously we used to control most of the countries around the world, decades and decades ago. Yeah. So we have this sort of stiff upper lip that we are the best at what we do, and we will do it our way. Maybe they're just waiting for eventually Brexit to come to its final stages. And then they'll make the decisions on what they're going to do. But first it will be medical, and then it will be recreational. Cool. Because they'll have to, and it's not about it's about money.
Yeah, always.
It's always about money. So you go back 30, 40 years. The governments were saying this will kill you, saying you're insane, and now they're being very hypocritical in what they've been saying for the last 40 odd years, and now saying, oh yeah, well actually it is medically beneficial for patients and. So it's just the way of the world, really.
The biggest contradiction is that they say it's got no medical health benefits because it's still, they are changing at the moment, but it's still illegal, and yet UK is the biggest exporter of medical cannabis in the world. It's the biggest contradiction.
Most definitely.
What I wanted to ask about...
Well,
Go on. I don't like to cut you short.
In essence... Yeah, I know. Well... If you look at, they want to do more white papers, and they obviously want, the pharmaceuticals are running scared because at the end of the day, pharmaceutical companies don't want to fix you. They just want to keep you alive and keep feeding you the pharmaceutical drugs that they give you, whether it's cancer drugs or whatever else.
Yeah.
Cannabis, whether people doubt the medical benefits or not, I know for a fact that it's healed people that I know. Yeah. There's one particular lady that's a friend of my father's, and she was given 3 months to live. She had breast cancer, and it spread through her body. And she was treated, and after 6 months, she's completely clear. She changed her diet. She changed how she conducted her life, and just took huge amounts of cannabis and or cannabis oils, and she's now completely clear. And there's lots of other people that I know all around the world who take it on a regular basis, who keep, or help themselves and heal themselves. So obviously the governments are scared because they don't want it to be put in the hands of the general public, because the general public can basically heal themselves.
I say to people that let's put aside the fact that, or let's not say the word fact, let's put aside that a lot of people are healing themselves with cannabis and cannabis oils, and let's look at what is hard fact. And what I know to be hard fact is that when you get cancer, a lot of people will go for chemotherapy. And what chemotherapy does is, one of the things that it does is it completely destroys the body's ability to produce the hormone ghrelin. And ghrelin is what makes you hungry. So when you suppress the ghrelin hormone, you're not hungry, and that's why people, and also the feeling of sickness, not wanting to eat, your immune system drops down because you're not getting the right minerals and vitamins into the body. That is one of the worst side effects of chemotherapy. So add to that the THC, the CBD of cannabis, that it's absolutely proven, and it's a fact that THC stimulates ghrelin production in the body, and that we call it the munchies. That's what it's called. But the scientific is it stimulates ghrelin production. So at the at the proven point, and what science knows to be true 100%, is that cannabis stimulates hunger. And if you take cannabis when you're on chemotherapy, you can eat. Your immune system is going to be higher, and you're able to deal with the side effects of chemotherapy a lot better. So that is proven fact, and that's discounting the stuff that we truly know to be true, but science is yet to prove it.
Well, if you think about it logically, chemotherapy Chemotherapy is a liquid poison that's put in your body.
Yeah.
Poisons or cancers feed on poisons.
Yeah.
Radiotherapy, it's a radiation that's put on your body. Radiation causes cancer.
Mm.
And the classic example is my father. My father had prostate cancer about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've been treating my father ever since. Whether the government's like it or not, I don't really care. It's my father.
Yeah.
What the effects of the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy were on my father is that they eroded the strength in his bones.
Mm.
So now my father can hardly walk. To use one of those Zimmer frames.
Yeah.
8 years ago he's 75 now. 8 years ago he was still climbing up trees with a chainsaw and cutting trees down. Now he can hardly walk. He's got a mobility scooter, and the only thing, and he's stopped taking all the pharmaceutical drugs bar one, I think.
Yeah.
And now he takes as much as he can cannabis oil. And the main thing that benefits him, it takes the pain away from him and helps him sleep.
Yeah.
Because he's not well at the moment. He's just recently fallen over. He's actually in hospital now.
Mm.
But to just keep my father alive and benefit him and take the pain away from him, he said it's an absolute godsend.
Yeah.
So anyone, any federal governments that are listening to the conversation, they can do what they like to me. But if you as a father or a parent or a child that was in the same state, you would do absolutely anything within your power to try and keep that person alive.
100%. And the key word that we need to say is that he's not just alive, he's happily alive, he's not in pain, he's getting good night's sleep. Like pharmaceutical companies can keep people alive, but the pain that they're in, the amount of tablets that they have to take, the side effects that those things give to people, it's like you can either stay alive or you can stay happily alive in comfort, getting good night's sleep, eating your food and having a good quality of life, which is what it's all about.
For sure. And there's one thing that I'd really like to sort of point out is that people really look at cannabis national. What concerns me in this industry now is the way that people separate in cannabis, CBG, CBA, and CBD, whatever, all the elements, the THC elements of that particular oil that comes off that plant. If people, and where the governments are obviously concerned, and the person who really sort of made impact in my life was the guy from Phoenix Tears. What was his name? I can't remember what his name is.
Phoenix Tears.
I
remember Phoenix Nights, but I can't remember Phoenix Tears.
He's probably in about 70s, 80s. Lovely, lovely guy. And I've seen so many different types of oils. Some are clear, some are in droppers, some are in capsules, this, that, and the other. The purest way to ingest cannabis is the dark oil that people, extract, or rosin presses. That is the purest form without any adulteration or anything, any separation. That is the way to take cannabis oil. When people start saying, we've got it in capsules, we've got it in droppers, the biggest joke, as far as I'm concerned, is the Hollett and Barrett brand. It's an absolute joke. And all they're doing is capitalizing on people's perception of healing themselves. You take a bottle of that Hollett and Barrett CBD oil, there's hardly anything in it.
Like olive oil?
And, it's more, probably is, high percentage of olive oil. But at the end of the day, it's not going to do anything to anyone. And that's where greed's coming in. And that's why I'm getting a little bit tired of the industry, because the commercial industry, because it's just greed, and it's not about healing people. It's about making as much money as you possibly can. I mean, look at the fiasco that happened recently with the vape pens in the States and the vitamin E acetate.
Yeah.
That's all about greed. That's not about people, having a conscience and helping other people. It's just all about money and getting as much as they possibly can. I mean, how many people died from ingesting cannabis up until the vape pen saga? Absolutely nobody. No, there's not one reported death of cannabis overdose ever in the world.
Yeah, no.
And then you start having people putting, other fillers in vape pens and changing the way that they ingest it, so it becomes more technical and more modern, or And it's just,
more
you know,
profitable.
it's a bit sad, really. Yeah, it's a bit sad, you know, I think. And from what I gather, that there's certain governing bodies in the US are now trying to ban vape pens full stop. And all that will happen, they'll ban it, the government will then sort of jig it, and then the government will legally dispense vape pens under their guidance.
Yeah.
That's all they'll do.
Yeah. With their maximum amount of taxes and profits for themselves.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, if people, Rick Simpson, that's his name, from Felix Tears.
Okay, yeah, I remember Rick
So,
Simpson.
I mean, so Rick Simpson is a huge advocate of, you know, healing people. I think he helped either Cheech or Chong, I can't remember which one of the guys is alive, but he had bowel cancer years ago. And I think, as far as I'm aware, he went up to stay with Rick Simpson for 6 months. Yeah. And Rick Simpson put him on a course of this concentrated dark oil that you know, main extract, you know, before it's sort of like refined. And now Cheech or Chong, which one of the guys is now alive and has his own brand of cannabis.
Mm. Yeah. I think it's Cheech, the guy with the white hair and the greying beard. Yeah.
I mean, you know, for people, and it's really easy to make. It's not difficult to make. You know, people have this sort of like a little bit sort of petrified or scared on how they can, you know, get the oil and everything. It's really quite simple. It really is. And if people really want to know how to do it and do it for themselves, they need to go on the Rick Simpson website or the Phoenix Tears website, and also look at some of the case studies from the Stanley brothers, Josh Stanley and his brothers from Colorado. And Charlotte's Web was obviously was derived from there, you know, obviously named it after a little girl called Charlotte.
Yeah.
And look at some of the videos of Charlotte when she was having seizures, and now look at Charlotte now. I think, you know, it's 5, 6, 7 years later. You know, Charlotte's bouncing around and takes a regular dose of cannabis oil every day, and that's proof in the pudding. Absolutely. And you know, and it should always be taken in its raw form without any, you know, any manipulation or anything like that. And it's so simple. You know, people just need to go on there, and that's unfortunately what all the governments are afraid about. They don't want people to start healing themselves, and it's really quite sad because obviously the pharmaceutical companies have got such, you know, financial might that they help prop up governments to stay in, you know, in power. And obviously, you know, you've got the likes of Bayer and Monsanto and all the others who are profiting from that by having government staying in power so they can do what they want to do. And at the end of the day, you look at all the pharmaceutical drugs that come out. I mean, classic example is my father and other people I know. The side effects of pharmaceutical drugs are horrendous. Yeah, absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, they're terrible. I like you look at these kids with epilepsy, like Charlotte, and they were taking like 12 to 25 tablets a day. So 4 of them would be for the epilepsy. The other 19 would be for to counter the side effects of the epilepsy drugs. It's just absolutely mental. But these pharmaceutical companies, like you say, these billion-dollar corporations, they have a lot of money invested in the research and development. And with the pharmaceutical companies, I do genuinely believe that, obviously, the profit-driven, but I do believe that in a lot of cases, they're trying to make products that want to help people. But when something comes along that is in a way proven and is being continued to be proven to be better, then it's going to get the backs up that this product could wipe out all the research that they've done, because something that's naturally occurring is helping people just as good, if not better, than their concoction of pharmaceutical drugs. But it's
without a doubt. You know, it's a sad world we live in, you know, and unfortunately greed speaks volumes.
Yeah, it is. It's all about education. And if we can educate just one person and that person educates 2 people and 2 become 4, I think it's the effect of, I call it the effect of 22. It's just the effect of doubling. And by doubling up to 22, so if you had one person educate 2 people, those person educate 2 people, then by the time 22 people have been educated, there's over 1 million people have been taught a lesson. The power of doubling, and I love that. I love that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, times are changing. You know, I never thought in my lifetime that this would be happening now, and quite rightly so. And I just think, you know, if people realise that they can either, you know, eventually be able to grow their own and create their own oils for themselves, and obviously barter, or the old bartering system where people have various oils or various plants and they swap them internally within themselves. Crack on, as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely.
I'd rather be heavily involved and make no money. It's much happier for me, from my point of view, looking at being able to help people because of the abilities that I've been able to sort of gain over the 30 years that I've been a horticulturalist. To be able to help people, you can imagine if your child, if your son or your daughter is dying from a cancer or anything like that, you would do absolutely anything to protect them and keep them alive.
Yeah, you would do what it took to keep them alive, and you would happily sit wherever the government wanted you to sit for the rest of your life, knowing that your little son or daughter was alive, and that's every single parent on the planet to do that 100%.
And there's nothing more satisfying than helping somebody. There isn't.
I know. The gift of giving. It keeps on giving.
Yeah.
So just dead quick, because I know that you've got a lot of meetings and that you're out and about today. The places where you're at.
I've not got too many meetings. I've got my swimming trunks on and do a bit of sunbathing.
Listen, before we came on podcast, I said to you, don't rub it in because it's freezing here. It's windy. It's rainy. I've got the fire on the telly to make it feel as though it's warm, but it's just not. It's not working. But the places that you are they looking to take on AutoPot's systems or the methods that AutoPots can give to them, or are you there in a just purely consultancy capacity?
No, it'll probably be a mixture of both. So yeah, I mean, obviously over here in Columbia, water, even though water is in abundance, it's taxed very highly for some reason. Power obviously is intermittent.
Yeah.
They have power outages the further you get out of cities. And obviously the biggest issue we have with AutoPot is the initial expense. People who are historically knowledgeable in horticulture will always look at the ROI over a period of time, 5 years, 10 years. So that's where AutoPot wins. And if you have the common sense and the intelligence to be able to look at not the here and now, but the future, AutoPot may be more expensive compared to a dripper system, but you've got no water being lost and creating salinity of the land. You've got no power required. You've got no recirculation, and various other, commendable, aspects that go with AutoPot. And obviously it's just plant driven. So you're not having to have these technical computers. So from our point of view, we've had meetings obviously already here in Bogota, and we've had meetings with Pidica, and Pidica said, well, it's compared to a dripper, it's costing us $6 a pot, whereas yours is $30 a pot. So yeah, okay. But how much fertilizer will you save over the next 10 years? How much water will you save over the next 10 years? I gave them a quick example of the trials that we did at Valley Grown Nurseries in the early 2000s, where we proved that we could save 45% of water and fertilizer over a period of 11 months and still grow a crop that's equal to the drip systems that they're already using in the 10 acres of pepper plants. And then their ears pricked up. And because that's one thing that, unfortunately, within this industry, it's a very new industry. So you've got a lot of bankers involved, a lot of money people involved. And the money people are interested in the bottom line, because ultimately commercial crop production, whatever you are, is all about the bottom line. So over a period of time, if you can prove we can prove to these, the growers all around the world, whether it's, Colombia or wherever else around the world, that, you will pay more for this system. This system will still stand the test of time because we've been around for 20 years, that you will save water. You won't dump it into the ground. You'll save on power. You'll save on fertilizer. And they did quick maths when we were in one of the meetings. And just on the existing facility that I have, because I've only got one room running at the moment. I think I've got another 14 rooms to come, hopefully up and running by February.
Yeah.
Just on one room in 1 year, they saved $90,000 in water usage.
In 1 year?
Forget the fertilizer, just in 1 year. So their ears pricked up when I started telling them some statistics of the benefits of using AutoPot, and sensible people and money people, that's where you have to hit them with regards to, the cost saving. You might spend more now, but you'll save more over a period of time. Yeah. You'll have more accuracy. And, and also labor as well. I mean, the classic example was the Grove in Vegas. When we first put the systems into Vegas, into the Grove, they anticipated that they needed 45 members of staff to run the facility, the actual growing areas.
Yeah.
They actually only used 9.
Oh, so
you suddenly got...
So AutoPot cost jobs.
Yeah. But this is the way, I can talk, I'm a great consultant. I know what I'm growing. These people are not interested.
Yeah.
They're interested in the return.
Yeah.
And if you're running a business, you've got to be interested in return.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you've also got to be proficient in how you can grow a plant. And unfortunately, when you go into a mass production, a million plants or whatever, and they have to keep going through the conveyor belt day in, day out, that's when it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
And you have to know what you're doing. You look at the Canadians, what they've done, and they really have ballsed it up, on a mass scale. I mean, the share prices have dropped, almost 80-90% in some instances. It's ridiculous. And that's because they sold it on a pipe dream to the stock exchange. We've got these great glass houses in snow belts, and we're going to make loads of money. The share price of Growth Canopy went up to, this time last year, was at $74. I think yesterday or today it was like at $16. So, obviously Constellation have invested, the Corona company, the big drinks company, invested billions into it. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? And at the end of the day, you can have as much money as you like, but if you haven't got the knowledge and the ability to be able to grow proficiently and very, very well, because, people aren't fools anymore, and they won't, and as times have changed with regards to the cannabis laws around the world. And people, the older generation, because the older generation, like myself, feel a bit, sort of like creaky in the morning, and then start to look at other things and hear their grandchildren talk about what's going on, and hear their children, and lots of elderly people are starting to look at it as well, which is, and obviously for a reason, because they're coming towards their ends of their life. They want to extend their life as much as possible, and instead of taking pharmaceutical drugs to deal with the ailments that they're dealing with, they'll take droppers or oils, whatever, and they've got no issues with it anymore. I mean, it's becoming more open-minded, which is great.
Yeah, 100%. So talking about the AutoPots and the systems that are going in around the world, the biggest sort of benefit to those growers, especially the ones that don't really know what they're doing. So when you mentioned that they were using drippers, and then that they're going to switch onto AutoPots, I think that obviously the cost saving to them is the biggest benefit. But with drippers, the grower is assuming he or she is God and knows exactly what the plant wants. But the AutoPots valves are filling them individually. What you call a plant-centered irrigation or plant-controlled irrigation.
Plant-controlled irrigation. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, a classic example. Just recently, we've got another facility which I'm going to be visiting. When am I? I'm off from here on Monday. I'm in Florida, and then I've got meetings in Florida. Then I'm up to Garden Remedies in Boston for 2 days. And Garden Remedies at the moment, as it stands, they've got about 13,000 XL pots in their facility, and they've been hitting 1.4, 1.6 grams per watt for the last several years, really dialed in. And all their produce up to date, up until recently, has been going to extraction for vape pens.
Yeah.
Well, the state of Massachusetts, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, banned the sale of vape pens in the state of Massachusetts. We found out that Garden Remedies have obviously got they're going to expand on their existing facility. And what they were going to do, they were going to start putting drippers in. Because, and I couldn't even argue this when they came to me, they basically said, look, we're not going to get AutoPot because they grow the plants too well. And we don't need good, high-quality plants because they're all going to extraction. Now they've had to do a complete U-turn because the state of Massachusetts has just banned the sale of vape pens. So now they've just put another huge order in for the XL modules.
Yeah.
They're also going to be going into greenhouses, and now they're forced to actually sell flour because the flour that they're producing from the XL modules that they're actually growing en masse, they're producing fantastic plants.
Yeah.
Whereas before they were going to head down the road of drippers because they weren't bothered about the quality of the plant because it was all just going to go for extraction.
So it's been banned, the vape pens. Is it something called popcorn lung? Is that what it's been doing to people?
Yeah, from what I can gather, it's a vitamin E that's been added. I think it's been chased down or nailed down, or the pinpoint has been by the various scientific laboratories where all these vape pens have been sent. It's been found out that the main cause has been vitamin E acetate. And obviously, when that's combusted, it basically becomes poisonous, and it lines the inside of your lungs, so your lungs can't breathe. And so obviously, state of Massachusetts, and I presume various other states, or maybe the whole of the United States, will just ban it full stop.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is not just sort of cannabis pens. This is also, just vape pens, with nicotine in them, the whole lot.
Well, back to sort of reminded myself to my my nutrition days. I remember that there's 4 vitamins that we had to be wary of, and they were vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, and vitamin E. The reason that we had to be wary of them as public health nutritionists is because those 4 vitamins are fat soluble, so you can absolutely overdose on them because it remains in the fatty tissues in your body. Everything else you can just excrete out. Like, you can very hard to overdose on vitamin C because it's excreted in your urine. So I'm wondering, obviously that's got the side effects of combusting vitamin E. I'm wondering if the vitamin stays as a vitamin E after combustion, it's going to accumulate into the fatty tissues as well, which is not good. Any accumulation of vitamins leads to, like, when you have deficiencies and toxicities in plants, stunts growth, unhealthy plant, and that's exactly what it does to humans. So it's scary. It's scary because we've got 60 years of research on tobacco, and we know exactly what goes wrong with it. There's only 5 years worth of research on these vape pens, and a case of example. Barry in the shop, he was a smoker for a long time. He managed to stop smoking, but had to use a nicotine pen. And he actually came back after about 6 months using a vape pen and said, "You know what? I actually feel more out of breath and more. I don't feel well myself since I've gone onto these vape pens." So he's actually just stopped the vape pens now, which is great all around. But he's been a long-term smoker, short-term vapor, and said that the vaping, for him personally, was just not good for him, and he had less energy, and he was running up the stairs out of breath.
Yeah, no, I mean, I must admit, I tried the vape pens for a little while. I mean, only for a couple of months. I can remember waking up one morning and my tongue was orange, and I thought, that's not right, and just stopped. And I just think, if you start sort of putting a technical spin on something that's natural, people for generations and generations, Bob Marley and people in Jamaica and all around the world have just been smoking blunts, joints, doobies, whatever you want to call them. And there's been no detrimental effect, obviously, unless you put tobacco in it. A lot of people, like the Rastas will never put tobacco in. They'll always just put pure cannabis in there. There's never been any issues, to date, of any death-related deaths whatsoever. But once you start messing about, people have these rigs and, it all becomes a bit technical, and there's no purity in it anymore, and it's not where the roots came from. It all just become, and you look at the younger generation and, showing, on YouTube and Instagram and trying to get the strongest cannabis they possibly can, and all these ingenious and weird ways of trying to ingest it. It's just like, it's not right.
Yeah, leave it alone. Right. Leave it alone. I was having a conversation the other day with somebody who regularly consumes cannabis, and they were doing it through the day, and when I like to think about it, and this is how I would like to other people to think about it. They should treat it. It's much better for you than alcohol. That's proven. But treat it like alcohol, in my opinion. Like, people, it's each individual. It's up to them. But I would, if it was up to me and I was a smoker, I wouldn't do it through the day. Just like I don't drink Coronas or I don't drink red wine through the day. It's an after. It's a pleasurable thing to do.
After work, relaxing.
Sociable thing to do. Obviously, you can't do it in the UK because if you're driving a car or you're doing anything like that. But I say to people, think of it like a glass of wine. You don't go out at 10 o'clock in the morning and just have a glass of wine. Start treating it like that. Start treating it like responsible adults, and let's go for it. And the reason I'm saying that is because, like you say, the kids or the people who are trying to mess with it and trying to make 40%, 50% THC strains or producing products that have got 50% plus THC. Essentially, you're trying to produce a shot of Sambuca with 80% volume alcohol. It's like, you don't enjoy it anymore. It's like you're just getting the pure effect and then not enjoying like the 90% of the plant that people enjoy, the terpene production, the flavors, the smells, the aromas, all these things. They just want to get, basically, they want to get drunk as quick as possible. That's not what drinking alcohol is
Yeah.
about. It shouldn't be what about consuming cannabis is about.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I mean, all things, whether they are, they're always up for abuse by whatever generation it is, and that's just the way of the world, and it's always been the same. I mean, if you look at the state of fentanyl, for example, in the United States, I mean, Colombia, from what I gather, is a huge producer of fentanyl.
Yeah.
Mexico is a huge producer of fentanyl, which is 50 times stronger than heroin. People are cutting it into cocaine, I hear, and various other things. There's so many related deaths to fentanyl in the United States. They need not be worrying. This is why I think the bill will probably pass in the United States and it will federally become legal, because they've got other things to worry about.
Yeah.
And it was the pharmaceutical drug companies that created fentanyl, and then fentanyl was taken, reverse engineered, put into the workshops in Mexico and in Colombia, and now it's being farmed into the US and being obviously consumed by people who suffer from heroin problems and social issues, and it's just not right. The government should hang their head in shame, to try and ban a natural, or be the way state of prohibition with the cannabis, which is a natural plant that grows on the planet, that has known to have medical benefits for decades. And to outlaw it, the only reason they've outlawed it because they've known the medical benefits. They've known that people can actually heal themselves. They've known that the pharmaceuticals will financially suffer if this particular drug or plant becomes available in the public domain. And they should hang their heads in chains, because there's lots of children and lots of people who've died because they've not had or not been able to be able to sort of administer oils, cannabis oils for themselves. And then you've got the issues with fentanyl. I just think, quite frankly, I think it's disgusting. But unfortunately, that's the way of the world. And pharmaceutical companies, have no shame, and it's all about money at the end of the day. And it's sad. It is really sad. I look at the cannabis industry and the way I see it now, and I hope to God that it will, I look at the Canadian market from our point of view, and I think I've said this to you before, that 3 years ago you'd asked me, people always ask me in the UK, do you think it's going to become legal? What do you think is going to happen to the market over here? 3 years ago, I would have probably said, before Canada came online, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
But Canada is our largest market on the planet at the moment. We're shipping container after container out to our distributors over there, Green Planet and Biofloral, and probably 80%, a lot of it's going into commercial facilities, but probably 80% of our products are going to home growers who are just growing their own, because they're allowed to grow 4 plants.
Yeah.
Whether they're consuming it via a joint, or they're making it into oils and treating people, why not?
Yeah.
And if Canada is a benchmark to look at for the rest of the world regards to growing your own, then I think they're heading in the right direction. Regards to the commercial production of medical cannabis or recreational cannabis in the United States, and in Canada, it's a joke, because they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And I've spoken to people, but young people, just want to go to the dispensary. I said, well, yeah, they probably will, but horticulture worldwide, growing tomatoes, cucumbers, Mr. and Mrs. Jones at home, who become proficient growers in growing those plants for themselves so they can eat their produce during the summer period. They'll just think, well, yeah, okay. Well, I've spoken to my son Jason, and he says, if I grow a cannabis plant, which is now legal in the UK, and I take the flower from that and I extract it, which is very simple to do. Go and look at the Phoenix Tears website, the Rick Simpson website. It's a very, very simple process. You don't need these super duper great big refraction facilities. You can make it yourself, and you can, it's all a load of bollocks. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if people can do that and are allowed to do that, then, the pharmaceutical companies, unfortunately, will, eventually be on their knees, because the ailments that the actual plant cures are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And just well-being in life, I mean, I take CBD oil every day.
Yeah.
Obviously not while I'm here, because I couldn't bring it over, but when I'm at home, I take CBD oil every single day. It has a certain amount of THC in it as well, but I just do that for my well-being.
Yeah. And it benefits
just because of course it does. It does. My biggest downfall, I smoke cigarettes, but obviously I've got 8 days in Florida as of Monday, and that's me going cold turkey because there's no one around near me. So I'm going to try and stop smoking cigarettes completely, so that by the time I get to Vegas, I'll be a new young man.
Yeah, well, you can tell us the CBD's working wonders, because if anybody that knows you, Jason, well, you're actually 104, but you don't look a day over 70. So I'm gonna have to jump on the CBD, stay young forever, like you.
Yeah.
So
next time you see me, I will. I'll be zooming around in a buggy.
Can we sticker it up?
Exactly.
So you're off once you've done all your work and you've finished to Florida. You're going to in December the MJBizz conference, aren't you?
Yeah. So I've got now, because of what's happened in Chile, I sort of had 8 days to kill. So I thought, right, I'll go and sit tight and sit pretty in Florida for 8 days. I've got a meeting in Florida. Then I'm up at Garden Remedies to go and see those guys and a new client who's just come on board.
Yep.
Then I fly down, I think on the 6th or the 4th or 5th, 6th, down to Vegas, and then everybody from the UK is flying over, and the guys from the US are coming down. And I think the MJBizz show is from the 11th to the 13th. I mean, last year was immense. I mean, if you walked every aisle, it was a 5-kilometer walk, and I think this year it's 20% bigger than it was last year. So yeah, I've actually pitched ourselves right amongst the sharks. So we're right next to the Hawthorne Group and all the major players that have now bought themselves into the market.
Yeah,
and we'll just see how it goes. At the end of the day, we're sort of ripping up trees, gently here and there, and sort of turning heads, and I don't suffer fools lightly. All these major players in the industry, I'll always sort of have my point of view, whether people don't think it's right. It's my point of view, and people have their point of view. And I am in the industry to make some money, but at the end of the day, I want to have a conscience.
Yeah. You're already AutoPot. You can sit pretty. You can 104 now. I don't know when you're going to retire, but imagine how much water you've saved by all the people that use AutoPots. You've made a big impact in the environment just by doing that. It's not me blowing smoke up your backside. It's just a fact. It is. And I remember when you did the first podcast with us, episode 7, and you talked about you've got the designs for the hanging baskets, and whenever you get time to release that, it's going to save an Olympic-sized swimming pool of water every day or every week. It's ridiculous.
No, every week. We did it. The study that we did. It actually the saving of water for hanging baskets. And this was probably about 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
The market research that we did, it was actually the size of the old Wembley Stadium every week. So hanging basket growing in the UK is even more popular than it was 10 years ago. So I can imagine it's maybe 1.5 times the amount of water saved at the old Wembley Stadium. Yeah. So people who've been following us on Facebook, they've seen that I've designed a hanging in its sort of like prototype stage. I'd like to try and get it out within next year. Whether that'll happen or not, I'm not sure, because I've got other designs that we're doing. But yeah, I mean, we do lots of diverse stuff. It's not all about cannabis, because at the end of the day, and I've always said this, everybody needs to eat.
Yeah.
In the world. And this is why obviously we're doing the project for the last 4 years in Kenya. Good news as well is that we've the World Bank visited NAM, who's looking after the site there. And recently, I've just literally NAM. He's had the World Bank visiting twice over the last couple of months. They've now just agreed on him creating a nursery that's going to be filled with the easy to propagate, to raise plants, then plants to then go into villages, so then people can grow their own plants. The only problem is with the likes of the World Bank, the UNICEF, and all these the Red Cross, they are supported by pharmaceutical companies and the likes. A classic example, when I did the show of several years ago at the Chelsea Flower Show, and we did what was it called? Refugee Garden, Refugee Greenhouse. Feed,
I remember
grow, feed, survive. I think was the strap line.
Yeah.
The main issue, and it's obviously I've learned a bit more about it, is that governments, war and famine produce money for larger companies to supply in supply.
and eat it and have, better quality of life until, the conflict, hopefully back home, they can go back home. They said that's never going to happen.
What do you mean? He said, and I was talking to a lady and she worked for the RHS. And she said, look, I've just recently come back. I can't remember if it was Uganda or somewhere else in Africa. And they'd set up a water sort of supply line into the village. As soon as they left, the government turned it off because they don't want them to have their own, their own thoughts, their own concepts of where they can go. They want to try and keep them harnessed and want to keep them trapped in there. And this is the biggest difficulty that we will have in Africa. And we've created a concept in Africa that 4 years ago everyone doubted that we could do off-grid growing to the scale that NAM's actually been able to do now. So now the World Bank's been to see us twice. They've now tentatively pressed the button to say, yeah, okay, we want you to, create a nursery that you can obviously feed plants, young seedling plants into, villages. But our point of view is we don't want to give them the plant. What we want to do is we want funding to set up greenhouses there, so then we can teach them how to do off-grid growing. The problem is with that, then they become sustainable. Then they have a mind of their own, and then that power is taken away from the governments that are obviously suppressing them. And that's the biggest dilemma with politics and governments these days, is that they want to keep people within their power, so that so they can't progress in their life. Yeah. And it's a sad thing. And unfortunately, when you look at it and you think about it, and you look at the amount of money that's generated, well, let's say the cannabis industry so far. I mean, someone on LinkedIn the other day, he was boasting how he'd managed to raise $100 million in 4 hours. And I put on the thing, I said, start boasting when you give that money to charity in Africa so they can feed themselves, you bloody idiot. And he wasn't overly impressed with that, but yeah, that's just my point of view. Yeah, no, but yeah, at the end of the day, everyone's, if people work hard, and quite right, they should make some money, but they should also have a conscience. And unfortunately, you look at, the Roundup saga and the, from Monsanto and the Bayers and the chemicals that have been sprayed on, and the wildlife that's been depleted. And it's just like, it's not a nice world that our children are going to grow up into, unless they can have, unless they have more influence in the way that people think. And it's just the way it is, really. It's a little bit sad, but at the end of the day, I suppose if you can try and change and chip away at it, then at least you've done your bit.
Exactly. So this all seems, or could seem, very daunting to the people listening. Like, how do you make change? How do you make change on a global scale? And the answer is really, really simple. And there's a really brilliant story that it's probably my favorite story, because you can apply it across all aspects of life. There was a man walking down the beach, and every few hundred yards he'd stop, he'd pick up a mussel or a starfish and throw it into the sea. And then he'd walk a bit further, he'd pick up another one, throw it into the sea. And somebody saw him doing this every morning. So he went over to him and said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm just saving this starfish. And he went, but there's 1 million starfish on this beach, they're all going to die. He went, what difference is it going to make? He walked a little bit further, picked up another starfish and said, it'll make a difference to this starfish, and threw it into the sea. And basically the moral of that story is, it's not about trying to save the world, it's just doing your little bit. And if every person on the planet just did their little bit, then you've got global change, and that's how it happens.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, then you look at South America and look at the suppression that's been going on over here in Chile and Bolivia and Ecuador, and yesterday here in Colombia. And it's all about the suppression of government and people not having equal rights. And, utilities being sold off to multi-conglomerates over in the US and various other. And it's just the rich will get rich and the poor will get poorer. And unfortunately, the reality of life is, look at the state of the seas of the plastic. It's taken everybody screaming and shouting. And you go in the supermarkets now, and instead of, and the plastic bags have gone in certain supermarkets, and now they're using, the compostable plastic bags that you used to put your coffee in the little bins that you have inside your kitchen. Now they're starting to use those. But the thing is, though, you look at all the packaging and everything's plastic. And why not do it? And unfortunately, it's the supermarkets that have created that problem, because they have dictated to the end user or the end consumer, this is how we're going to package the products for convenience for yourselves. And everyone's gone, yeah, that's brilliant. That's how we want it. Yeah. So gone are the old grocery days when you would go and have a look at all the apples and the pears and everything, get your brown paper bag, put them in and walk them out, because it's not convenient enough. Because the problem is with society these days is everybody wants it here and now. And you've got the younger generation. I mean, like this young girl. And I read something that someone, the young girl from Sweden who's campaigning about, great. But you look at the younger generation, all they're doing is constantly on their phones. They have to have the latest technology, which has a detrimental effect on the environment because they're all made in China. So you've got the younger generation, this girl included, who are, sort of professing for, change the world and do it, which is great, but it's very hypocritical because all the kids have to have the latest technology, all the latest gadgets, all made of plastic, all being sort of like mass manufactured in China and other countries. And it's just, it's not right. It just isn't. Yeah. So, great trying to make a point, but it's like, it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah.
So, but that's just the way of the world. If everyone could chip away, have a conscience and just be a little bit more caring about the planet that we live on, then it would be a better place. You keep putting poisons in your body to try and fix yourself from cancers, and you keep putting poisons on the land and expect the bees to still be hanging around, then you've got another thing coming.
I know. There's a lot of subjects that we could spend absolutely hours on, and if I let you carry on, you're going to create riots around the world of people protesting. We need to make flags and run down the streets with AutoPot logos on them, going change the world. But what? So you're in MJBizz in December.
Yeah.
You have said that if you get time, we'll organise a call. And for anyone that hasn't been to MJBizz before, myself included in that, we could have a little chat with you and see what's going on, who's who, what's where, and you can give us the lowdown on what's going on MJBizz 2019.
Yeah, no worries. All right. We'll touch base when I get there, and then we'll see if we can hook up, and I will have a wander around and have a little chat while I'm there.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, listen, Jason,
no worries.
When we said we were going to do this podcast, I thought it was going to be a little. Well, I did think it was going to be a 20-minute segment, but in my heart, I knew that there was not a chance I'm going to have Jason just on the phone for 20 minutes. So I think this is going to be a standalone podcast by itself. So thank you very much for
no worries.
Getting involved with
Mine's
it.
Mine's a mojito, please. I'll have a mojito. No ice. Thank you very much. Cheers.
You're just as bad as Eric. I say to him in the winter, don't tell me about your weather. And he goes, oh, okay, I won't, but I've got to go now. Got to go skiing for the next 4 hours on the newly freshly laid snow and off on the piste. You're just as bad, aren't you? I'm going to call you when I'm doing something good.
Just before I go, how are you coping with the competition?
So for everyone that doesn't know, the competition is another UK-based podcast called The Hydro Chronicle, hosted by Rich Hamilton. I haven't had a chance to have a listen yet, but it's been a while in the making, so I'm looking forward to having a little listen and seeing what content comes up. It's all good for the UK industry, but you've got a long way to go before you beat the world. We're definitely the UK's number one podcast. I'm pretty sure we're the European number one podcast. There's nothing in European that's beaten
really?
Us. Yeah,
wow.
Easily.
How many people are you getting each month now?
We averaged 70,000 a month at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a nice impressive. Big. So since the partners came on in February, of which AutoPot is one of the partners, we were averaging 45 to 50,000 downloads a month. And then we've increased that to 20,000 a month over the period, the last 9 months. So we're averaging 70,000, and I'm just thinking I want to hit that magic 100,000 number. But we've had in the last 24 months, we've had 1.8 million downloads in the last 24 months.
Wow!
So that's going really well. And
most of those, there's 1.7 just the AutoPot shows.
To be honest, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's your voice or I don't know if it's your magician on the computer. But every time I do a podcast with AutoPot, I do get a good amount of listeners. So whatever you do when you're on our podcast, please keep doing it because it does wonders for my podcast.
Good. Well, if this is the last podcast and the Medellin mafia to take me, you know why.
It'll be that'll do even more wonders for me numbers, but I think I'd prefer you to come back to the UK safe and sound, please.
Yeah. We'll probably talk. We'll touch base when I get to the MJBizz show in a couple of weeks, and we'll do a little podcast and let you all the guys who listen know what's going on there.
Yeah, let's not kid ourselves. It probably won't be a little 20-minute one. We'll do a proper podcast. Listen, you take care.
Right.
Enjoy your mojito,
Yeah, no worries.
you get, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much for calling in, bud.
No worries. Love to everybody. Take care.
See you
Cheers,
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So that was Jason from AutoPot live from Medellin, Colombia. We were expecting it to be a segment of a podcast, but Jason, he can talk and he's got a lot of interesting information. As you'll all know, because you've all managed to stay to the end and listen to the end of the podcast. So I don't know what number podcast this will be because I had to take that call off Jason literally with 24 hours notice. As I knew it would be, fantastic podcast. But give them a follow. They are one of the partners at AutoPot Cultivation, at AutoPot Global. Give them the website's really good as well. Really good lad working on the website, full of information, full of good videos. And thank you for joining us on this podcast. Don't know the number, but it will definitely be released before Christmas. So enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you very much for tuning in to NPK Live once again. Thank you. Bye-bye.